Hello everyone, it's great to see you all here tonight. I'm James, I work in the Binance Australia team. I would also like to say hi to those who are joining us on YouTube as well, so hello guys. Thank you everyone for joining the Binance Australia kickoff event. We are hosting many more meetup events like this as we are committed to building the crypto community in Australia. Today's a special one. We have most of the Binance Australia team here with us tonight. Today's panel will showcase the team working behind the Binance Australia platform. Since our launch last year, the team experienced many major breakthroughs bringing the platform forward, becoming the leading digital asset exchange in Australia. We'll also be discussing the many big crypto Bitcoin moments that happened in the past year. So before we go into any of that, please join me in welcoming our CEO, Jeff Yew.
Hey everyone, welcome. So thanks for taking time out to come down. How many of you here didn't know that we exist in Brazil maybe like a month ago or something? Raise your hands. Oh, do a pretty shitty job. Okay, I mean like we have actually been here. So like my background is like I do sort of a lot of trading back then in 2016, 2017. In 2017, we started Invest by Bit, which is the OTC desk, and then Binance partnered with us in somewhere around 2018, and then we just walked through regulations and groups and stuff like that to launch Binance Live, which you guys might have heard about buying Bitcoin by a news agent. And last year in July 2020, we launched Binance Australia, which is like a full exchange. So it took us a while to get through what sort of regulations and sorts because the size that we moved, we're definitely a bit more slow when it comes to the kind of regulatory way to play around. But since then we have break so many records. We are actually the largest digital currency exchange in Australia by trading volume. So you could have still seen like in news about. Some other exchange is the largest Australian exchange, but that's not true. Like we are, we have been for like maybe 3 months now. So maybe can how do I sort of put this? Okay, cool. Yeah, so to the introduction of what Binance Australia is, so we are a Australia registered ECE, stands for Digital Currency Exchange. So that's the same registrations that all Australian-based crypto exchanges or brokers have to register with Australia for. So here's the team. So some part of the team that will be speaking here today. So that's me, Jeff, and we'll introduce the rest later. So we are number one in trading volume. Go through that already. And we do have some very close key partners. Stan, if you're here today, raise your hand. All right. Check it. So crypto news run by this local very talented person called Sam. So he's other views on machine articles for us. It's pretty cool. We do work with a lot of other working with regulators and working with solutions here. We also work with and partner with a lot of media producers. So like I say, Finder, you might have seen the Finder TV interview that I did with Fred a couple weeks back. It was just published in Finder Crypto Finance Twitter yesterday or today. So the industry sort of partnerships we have, we are a member of Blockchain Australia since last year when we launched. So Blockchain Australia is the leading blockchain sort of developer, like all sort of government body that sort of oversees all of these companies, these startups and changes providers within crypto blockchain in Australia. So and also we are a member of FinTech Australia and Australian FinTech and FinTech Australia. That always gets always mixed up together.
start with what's cool. So what's cool about Binance Australia? So if you have your wallet or bank account from a trade, the fastest way to get any sort of trade cryptocurrencies is to use payout options. It's like simple, instant, fast. You can do large amounts. Gone are the days where you can do like 2x of quality transfer or you guys can play 2013, like what's like coin jar, cash check, excel that within. So I went through all those processes. So actually, one of the
reasons why we started Binance Australia is to make it faster for traders to sort of trade, because speed of moving capital is key in this market. Crypto is volatile, as well as high frequency traders, advanced traders. Those are things that you guys would appreciate a lot. And also for newbies, so PID Oscar is really simple. You can just transfer money from the app, Combank app, Westpac app on your phone into your Binance account, faster than your screen refresh. It's really awesome. Try it out. So how do you reach us? So we are on Telegram. So if you hop on Telegram, that's where sort of we like to say that that's not customer support. So let's go with customer support questions over there. We will just point you to customer support either way. But if there's something that you aren't too sure you can answer with, you can always reach out to me or any of the team members one day. But the thing about Telegram and social is that you have to make sure that you're dealing with the right accounts. So make sure that you look carefully, make sure there's no one impersonating our sort of members for me. Because like we have a group that we will never reach out to you first, right? So you always have to, if someone reaches out to you and say that, hey, I'm customer support, or I'm Jeff, hey, do something, send me crypto, it's 100% always a scam. Happens a lot in the space, unfortunately, not just with finance, but anything in crypto. Twitter is another place that you can keep up to the latest news and information. So if you ever have a new sort of coin listing or event or meetups like that, Twitter is the best place that we will publish. So definitely keep an eye on that. Similarly to all the other pages that we have. So in Telegram and Twitter is our two most active platforms. If you want to reach us, if you really have like something that you want to sort of watch back like an old live stream, YouTube channel is awesome. That's pretty much it. All right, thanks guys.
Thank you very much, Jeff, for that one. All right, now we'll move on to the panel discussion. So if I could welcome the team onto the stage, please. Come back.
Hello guys, welcome. I think let's start with an introduction of everyone here on the panel today. Is everyone the mic? Okay, we'll just pass it to Grayson first.
Okay, hello everyone. Is that too loud? All good? Sweet as. Alright, my name is Grayson. I am, should say that, technically operations, so kind of back office, reconciliation of all the transaction kind of stuff. I don't know, do we want to give a little bit of a backstory? Do you reckon backstory? Sweet as. Alright, so it's kind of short. Had a mate who was mining Bitcoin a few years ago, got interested, rode the 2017 bubble, got wrecked, and as you do, you kind of go down the rabbit hole, and I was fortunate enough to meet Jeff back in those days, and just kind of stuck with it and been here ever since, and fortunate enough to meet all these lovely people and join the team, and that's me.
Thanks, Grayson. So I'm Jeff, so I lead Binance Australia as CEO. So my background in how I got into crypto was 2013. That was when the secret financial crisis was its peak. It was around April, and sort of that trend about an alternative sort of fix that this thing that can fix the world called Bitcoin. Didn't really pay much attention to it, other than that this thing really excited me because I was always interested in technology and finance. And kind of geeked out for a little while. It took me like 2 years to actually buy my first coin because in 2013, that time in April, there was a time when I first got into Bitcoin, the news was about Bitcoin crashing from $260 to $80. So I was like, what the hell is this thing? I'm not going to put my money in this. And then a couple months later, in November, it took like I think in November, it sort of shot up to $1,000 in 2013. I'm like, oh, $80 to 1,000. I missed it, bro. Shit. Then it kind of crashed down after to 100, right? So I came up to this world with the sort of lens that this is something that can really fix the world. Like, I'm fully behind the concept, but I was kind of like, it took me a while to understand that price of Bitcoin and sort of the price discovery action of Bitcoin might not just be, something that really reflects the potential and the sort of good social good that Bitcoin can offer to the world. So I've since sort of wrapped my head around all the stuff, went down the rabbit hole. To me right now, I think that Bitcoin is the most important social infrastructure. What I mean by social infrastructure is that anything that can sort of benefit social good on a massive scale. So like, invention of agriculture, right? The M1 highway or the Story Bridge, they're all social infrastructures. So Bitcoin is the most important social infrastructure in my point of view because it has the potential to sort of shape sort of equality of financial inclusion around the world. Just because that we all live in very comfortable, very privileged countries, but there are a lot of places in the world that doesn't have basic this sort of inclusion to financial systems and services that we take for granted every day. So I think that's nothing much more important for me to do. That's why I'm here to sort of make sure that we build this thing up correctly, and that will be the future that I really want to see my next generations live in. So that's me. Thanks.
How do you follow that up? Yes, I'm James. I've been Bitcoin and crypto since 2017. Put it quite simply, I just had that weird conspiracy friend that was all anti-banks and anti-government, and I just invested like 10k into the concept, and he said, "What are you doing? Dude, you got to come across." So I said, "Okay." Yeah, it took a risk. I was young enough at the time to take a risk, and yeah, so that was awesome. And since then, I've just followed the scene really for the last few years, and just came across Jeff last year. He brought me on the team, and I'm loving it ever since. And it's nice to be able to do something that is for the crypto community. Yeah. Also, welcome to the client
Doing on side.
Yeah.
Hello everyone, Jose here. I run the daily operations side of Binance Australia. Day-to-day operations, onboarding people, signing them up, looking after a bit of customer service as well. Been in the space, I guess, back in 2012 when I was living in San Francisco, Bay Area, back in the days. So living with a bunch of software developers as my housemates. So I was introduced of one of my mates mining cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. So yeah, I just started to dabble around with it back in the days. Came across this website called Satoshi Dice. So bet a few coins there as well. So after I mine the Bitcoin, then you go straight to Satoshi Dice and just like bet and do like magic internet money that you could bet in the internet. So that was a good introduction for me on Bitcoin. And then after that, several years went here, arrived here in Adelaide, in Australia. So I founded the Bitcoin community meetup in Adelaide and started engaging with the Bitcoiners. So it's a very small community that we do meetups as well. I think that was the first time that I got introduced to Jeff.
At the front door with the gates. Thank you.
Finance Hub, back in the days with Travel Market. So I've been helping out with the community, just just being active in this space, getting people to be involved, introducing them the technology, and and then just continue from there. And then we introduced Binance Australia, and we're here, we're local, that's pretty much it.
Awesome, thank you. As for myself, I'm Hannah. Nice to meet you guys. I work in the marketing team with Vicky, who's at the frontier, technologically. Yeah, so my story isn't as interesting as these guys. I come from an architecture background who just happened to see one of my friends have a mining room in his living room, and that kind of got me into the Bitcoin rabbit hole. And yeah, so I got into travel market along with Jose and Jeff as well, and that led me to my current gig at Binance Australia, I guess. Thanks. So I think for the first question, what would be your thoughts on the landscape of Bitcoin in Australia?
What was the question?
Landscape of Bitcoin in Australia and crypto.
Well, yeah, I think it's just sort of like a reflection of the globe of what everything that's happening in the community. I don't know what you mean by landscape in.
Sorry. Yeah, so I suppose it's more like, what do you currently think of the current, how do you say it?
Yeah.
Ecosystem and what the...
I can take that answer. So I think Australia is one of the most progressive, used to be the most progressive when it comes to understanding Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. How many of you were in the Melbourne meetup with Andreas in 2013? One? Okay. So I mean, like in 2013, so one of the founders of the Bitcoin Brisbane meetup, Lucas, I don't think he's here today. So I worked with him a fair bit back then. Then he posted on LinkedIn, it's like the wage that we paid him a couple of years ago was sort of like 20 grand a day or something like that. It looks up to be at a Bitcoin price. So anyway, so he actually went to the Senate in 2013 to explain to the government that what Bitcoin is, how we should trade it. So in December of 2013, the RBA actually declared Bitcoin legal, and that's one of the first movers in the global space that came about to say something like this, pretty commendable. So and also in 2017, with all the ICOs and stuff, you can actually see that the sort of regulations sort of kick in a year later. Austrac regulating ECEs in early 2018. We were one of the early changes that grandfathered the Austrac registrations, and that's Australia has right now one of the highest concentration of regulated DCEs in the world. Because it's a very clear framework to work with, and as businesses, you like clear regulation. Regulatory uncertainty is something that really hurts business sort of rejecting their growth, rejecting their sort of plans longer than a couple of time frames of months. You look at what's happening in Nigeria, look at what's happening in India. The regulations should sort of go from left to right every few months. That's what really I would give it up to the entrepreneurs in that space that are still holding the fort over their places. So in the show, we're pretty lucky. So regulation-wise, awesome. We hope that we're still in that race. Currently we're looking at all these institutions coming to Bitcoin in the States. You've got like 7, 8 ETF now that's pending approval in the States. And I think Australia would be. I wouldn't think Australia would fall far behind with that. I would really want to see something like continue to hold that space. But when it comes to banking, we have AID, so instant bank transfers makes sort of trading and sort of withdrawal deposits so much quicker than I think most people would appreciate. If you live in other countries, there's no such thing as an instant bank transfer from one bank to the other at like a couple $100,000 of amount we're talking about. So in terms of banking support, it's awesome. We process easily close to about $1.5 billion of Australian dollars for the past few months in deposit and withdrawals. So that's a huge amount, one of the highest probably of Australia's exchanges. And we have never had any issues with our banks just because that we have a very clear anti-fraud compliance framework, and our banks are all very happy to work with us. So good regulation, good banking. The last part I think that's missing is actually education. Right, I think Australia is right in terms of in terms of all this stuff that we all fought for
business, as early adopters, as passionate believers of the space, and educators, people running meetups. I mean, Danielle is here tonight. She runs all things blockchain, and so she hosts meetups here as well on a regular basis. So I think the next step would be user education. How many of you have stories about having disagreement of what blockchain and crypto or Bitcoin is with your family and relatives? Like, a lot of people still don't get it. It's still not under their sort of concept of their role, that something like this is necessary, that something like this would be impactful. So I think the next step would be what we do, like all these meetups that are here. It's all about pushing the next level of education, getting more people aware of things, engaging with our customers, answering their questions, their doubts about the space. Pretty much anything is an open topic. So that's one of my focus areas, as well as getting the education right.
Yeah, I think something to add on to that is also Australia can be seen as America's little brother, and when you look at it that way, America's really taken a huge stride this year, especially with institutional adoption. You've seen MicroStrategy, Square, all these guys are actually adding Bitcoin to their balance sheets, and I think it's only a matter of time before we actually see that in Australia. Maybe this year, maybe next year, who knows? But at the end of the day, it's all about building that infrastructure to facilitate these big companies that will come in and give that liquidity and the security to put it on their balance sheets, so that they can hold their actual scarce and hard money rather than the dollar, which we all know is printed. But yeah, that's my take. I don't know if you guys have anything to add.
Actually, there is one ASX listed company that does have Bitcoin on its balance sheet.
DigitalX.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is good. They're a pathbreaker then.
Yeah, and they have a couple of managed investment schemes. One's like Bitcoin only, one's a traded basket of altcoins, I guess you'd say. But yeah, that's good to see. I think over time we'll definitely see more of that kind of institutional adoption here. And absolutely, yeah. BitcoinTreasuries.com, you can see all the companies in the world that actually have taken that next step and added Bitcoin to their balance sheets. And Tesla too, completely forgot. It's only a matter of time, right? But,
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the dollar, except for that if your time frame of living is more than 5 years. I think anyone with huge exposure to fiat currencies, most of you probably haven't noticed that if you look at the M2 growth in the US and M2 growth in Australia, they're pretty similar, right? We hit a rocket takeoff somewhere around 2020. So your rate of monetary expansion went from 5 to 6% a year to about 15 to 20% a year. Right? What that means is that if you have $1 million in savings in cash, previously at 5 to 6%, it takes you 35 years to meet the halfway point. So in 35 years or $1 million, we worth $500,000 in purchasing value. That's a long time to build wealth, right? Nobody will really give a shit, right? So in this current time, it's 15%, 20% a year. What it essentially means is that halfway point from 35 years is now 5 years. So your $1 million only worth 500,000 in just 5 years. So losing 100 grand each year. That's more than an average, full-time wage in Australia. And that's something that a lot of people aren't really aware of, just because it's happening so quickly. I think most people really are oblivious to the fact that people sort of think that monetary expansion is something happening, what's different, right? It's been happening for decades. What's wrong with that? So a lot of corporate CEOs and corporate CIOs and CFOs are sort of waking up to this fact that right now we are talking about not just $1 million in treasury, we're talking about hundreds of millions, potentially billions. If you're sort of a CFO sitting around with $100 million, right? Your business model is unlikely to outpace the devaluation of your purchasing power of your asset. There is really no way out, right? Your hollow rate is pretty much, if you have Bitcoin, nothing will exceed that hollow rate because, although, past performance doesn't determine sort of future performance, Bitcoin has been in a sort of price, sort of massive price discovery as it grows in about 12 years, 13 years. And we're seeing on average about 100 to 200% growth in sort of price. So your hollow rate
look for something, a pristine asset with a higher hold rate from that, you will never get it. So I think as more institutions look into Bitcoin as how there is a treasury, it's going to be a one-way black hole, right? Once you get the money in, there's no other investments out there that can convince you to sell your Bitcoin for something else. So I think that's what's happening with MicroStrategy. Everyone's just seeing at how much debt they can raise to buy more Bitcoin before it's too late. So not trying to pump up, you guys back then just take out phones and start to call some AID and stuff. But I think this is something that's really happening, and we're seeing that Australian sort of investors are pretty still comparative to the rest of the world are still pretty asleep at the wheel. So that's kind of alarming, right? So I think one of the things that we do as a regulated Australian exchange is that we also do sort of dealings with institutions, SMSF. And then, we come up with that whole SMSF article, and that's one of our missions to actually not let Australia lose that race on this global race to the bottom.
Yeah, I think that's one of the huge trends we've seen, at least in the last couple of months, is SMSFs buying Bitcoin. This is not just a little speculative asset anymore. This is $1 trillion monetary network, and Australia seems to really have a pretty large appetite for Bitcoin in their super funds. And it really makes sense, doesn't it? Because at the end of the day, Bitcoin with a hard cap is savings technology. What's an SMSF? It's a savings vehicle for the long run. So, it's this whole idea of getting off zero, right? Bitcoin has this complete asymmetric upside, and even a 1% allocation in any kind of standard 60% equity, 40% bonds portfolio just has such a massive effect, and people are starting to take notice, and then you get the wheels turning, and that's it. SMSFs and corporates, and it's definitely a game changer.
And anyone with a finance background, crunch numbers and stuff? Yeah, raise your hands.
All right, finance bros.
Finance bros? Great minds?
Yeah, we'll have a chat with you later.
So, but all jokes aside, run the numbers, crunch numbers, you'll be surprised at the Sharpe ratio of your portfolio if you have just a tiny bit of allocation. It actually reduces your portfolio volatility and increases your portfolio performance. Because people always think that no one in the right mind will put money into Bitcoin because it's so volatile. It's wrong. Run the numbers. Prove yourself incorrect.
And if anyone is like what the hell is the Sharpe ratio? The Sharpe ratio is your risk-adjusted return. So how much volatility are you willing to take for a certain upside? Bitcoin is the only asset in the world with a Sharpe ratio over 1. And that's some pretty incredible stuff.
What's problems?
0.33. All your models are destroyed. That's it.
Alright, I think we're spending enough time on this question.
Well,
So sorry for the rest.
do you want to have anything to add?
When do we see supers getting involved?
Right now.
I think it all depends on you guys, because you guys are the consumers of super funds. Like, I think if there's no show of demand from the consumer side, those guys will be the last one to innovate. Especially if we're talking about industry supers, right? They're all paying pensions up to 2050. That's most of where their obligations are until. They're not sort of looking after like chasing large yields. They're just looking at a set amount of fiat payout, assurance of that guarantee over however long the term is. So put it simply is that they're not worried about Bitcoin going 100, 200% every single vote. They're just worried about in week 272, do I have this much money to pay out this much pension? So I think, the supers that you guys are all probably on are the ones that you guys should talk to. Have a bit more voice in that capacity. Like, most of you guys here probably won't draw down your super for the next few decades, right? So what's the harm of allocating a small percentage of that and get exposure to Bitcoin?
I'm curious here, how many people have, like a standard superannuation that's not an SMSF? Put your hand up. Yep. How many people here would like to see a Bitcoin allocation in that super? Australia has an appetite for Bitcoin and super. Enough said. Do you want to?
Thank you. On the topic, I think we've said enough about situations at this point. But on the topic of mining, Jose, do you want to give some, I don't know, do you want to address the concerns around energy consumption?
Oh, like fun. Sure. There's a lot of obviously FUD is you don't know meaning of FUD is fear, uncertainty and doubt. So that's like a term within the crypto industry. Getting people to speculate on what Bitcoin, especially with electricity and green energy. But I would say from the time that I was doing it until now, I think mining is more of a green energy compared to other financial products. We all know when back in the days China was until now I guess is still the leading industry of mining. But most of the electricity that's being used in China are coming from hydroelectric energy that is stored, right? So I don't know where like a lot of this FUD that's going on every year. You would hear this FUD that mining is just a waste of energy and it's just consuming all producing all this energy and just wasting. So I cannot really say, but the decentralization part of mining is growing rapidly. It's not only China anymore. It's a rapid pace of including in America and other countries. European countries are doing it, and that's the most important thing about Bitcoin is the decentralization aspect. A lot of people are devoting their energy, time and energy, just so that they can contribute to the network, and that's the most important.
Yeah, interesting point on that hydroelectric thing. So I think there's a really good case study on, I think it's Qingdao, or one major Chinese city. It's completely run on hydroelectric energy, and the interesting thing is that only half of their grid can actually accept the energy being produced. So what do? Oh, Bitcoin is actually a wholesale energy market. If you're making excess energy, or another example is if you're drilling for oil and gas in America and you've got this massive flaring issue, what do we do with all this? Well, let's not vent it into the atmosphere. Let's stick a few Bitcoin mining rigs. Not only are we saving that methane from getting into the atmosphere, we're also not losing any money on that. So it's this really interesting concept of any kind of stranded energy or any kind of energy overproduction. Stick a few mining rigs on there and you're selling energy to the world at the free market price any time of the day. And on top of that, you've also got this kind of incentive to build and research and invest in the most efficient energy sources there are. Right? So a big one is any kind of solar or wind or whatever, any kind of remote areas that are really far away, you lose power through transmission, you now have a direct monetary incentive to put some R&D and build away.
Yeah, I think summarize what Grayson said is that Bitcoin used basically takes on stranded energy and actually makes it into something productive. And also it feels, there's actually an industry that is obsessed about chasing the best, the most efficient way of extracting and storing and transporting energy that we have never seen before. And I think there was a research done last year, about 73% of all Bitcoin mining is about renewables, right? That's something that a lot of people don't really see. And the thing that people always go but why do you need energy in the first place, right? Because Bitcoin runs on a concept called proof of work. So you guys remember in the early days of the internet, I'm just pretending I do because I was only a baby back then. So you guys remember the internet when email first came out, that was even before probably the sort of AOL days. There was a huge issue of email spam, right?
So because emails are free, you just basically send packets of data from one side to the other, and email spam was a huge problem for a lot of people. So this guy called Alan Beck, he created a protection tool for the spam protection tool called Hashcash. So instead of having free access to spam stuff, right now spammers have to pay something to actually censor. That monetary incentive, the monetary sort of burden will let those spammers twice before executing something like that. So you can actually see
email spam, right? In the blockchain spam is a huge issue for some of the smaller coins, right? If you look at some of the cryptocurrencies, altcoins that you probably hear on Reddit that has spam issues lately, they're all caused because it's free to sort of spam the network, right? So that ultimately comes down to like blockchain is data, right? The big, by logic, it's harder to store, right? And harder to store. If I tell you that, hey, download this software that is like 100 gigabyte, probably takes you like 10 seconds and a good fiber. If I tell you to download and store this software that is 100 terabytes, you would think twice, right? It's like, do I have to go and upgrade my computer, buy hardware? Why did this thing grow to 1,000 terabytes in 5 years? How do I keep up to that? So that will eventually lead to centralization of control of who owns those pieces of data, right? And you know what happens when things become centralized, then you lose the aspect of decentralization. So to keep Bitcoin secure and keep Bitcoin efficient in doing what it does is basically a very basic layer of monetary transfer plus rate value from one place to the other, and it's secure. It's basically giving the assurance of settlement finality. It's something that you don't get. Like, let's say credit card payments, so settlement finality is 180 days, right? Your bank transfer is 60 days, right? Try to settle the goal. Takes decades. Right? Look at how the German and French government is trying to repatriate that goal. They really can't do it. So with Bitcoin, we have something, a technology that can counter that, and we just want to make sure that it's protected in a way that it doesn't get it doesn't increase the barrier of entry to have a piece of the software, to run a piece of the software, because that's really the whole decentralization aspects of it. So that's why you can see that there is a camp that goes, proof of work is bad for the environment, but there's a camp that goes that proof of work is actually necessary to keep Bitcoin secure, right? And think of it another way is that if a dog tries to bury a bone that he tries to hide from, whatnot, the deeper the dog digs and buries the bone, the more secure it is, because the next dog that wants to come and take the bone to do more work to reverse everything that the first dog has done. So the same way, the same concept takes out to Bitcoin, security. It's always about security. Bitcoin's energy consumption is never going to go down, it's going to go up. And I think that if you compare to like gold mining, compared to the traditional banking systems, the sort of the lawyers, the accountants, the armies of all these people around to try to sort of secure and run traditional systems, it's magnitudes higher. We're talking about hundreds or thousands of magnitudes higher, right? Think about this, right? If you're running a business using fiat, you need to hire accountants to make sure that no one cheats you out of your money. You need to hire lawyers to make sure that even someone cheats out your money, you have some way to sort of chase them back, right? If you extrapolate this to like thousands or hundreds of thousands of businesses around the world using under the fiat system, minus the central banks and the military, the army, and everything that secures the fiat currency system, we have Bitcoin, you don't need to, right? Run a bit of software, the note tells you the transactions be confirmed, it's confirmed, that's it. You don't need no accountants, you don't need no lawyers, you don't need no military and army, right? It all happens in one layer. So it's basically taking all this wasteful alternative and putting something that is compressly efficient. So that's Bitcoin.
That's great, right? You haven't mentioned any other cryptocurrencies other than Bitcoin. Are you using that as a generic term for cryptocurrencies, or are you speaking specifically about Bitcoin?
So when I use Bitcoin, it's more of the monetary money, so the monetary networks. So what I mean by that is that sort of in cryptocurrencies, there's two kinds of crypto mainly, or at least there's two major groups. One of it is basically going after store value money, to sort of go after central banks because we think that we have a better solution. The other camp is on the utility side of things, which is to build something
like dApps, softwares, and all this smart contracts, which are cool. But I see them as separate sort of use cases for blockchain. So one side of it is using it for startups and all this cool innovation that's happening. And who knows, one of these things might actually work and actually replace an incumbent technology. But for me personally, I think that all cryptocurrency in the space plays that role, right? I mean, even though the ones that come and go, what it actually helps is it's actually part of a process for people to understand what actually works. It's like a natural selection process and whatnot. And ultimately, it's a great sort of financial educator to some group of people that might not have done their due diligence and research before dwelling deep into a lot of these experiments. So that's basically my thought. Because I think that with going after money, going after hard money is a very different beast and very different purpose than building the next generation of software to track provenance and voting on the blockchain. Those are very cool and important stuff, but it's very different from what the other side of the camp is going for.
Maybe just to turn away from the topic of Bitcoin, the NFT craze has been insane lately. Do you guys have any thoughts about that?
I do. We have a meeting here next Thursday talking all about NFTs.
Yeah, I mean NFTs are again. I had a podcast session with this guy from Bondi the other day, OL's in Sydney. So they are lawyers, so they understand. Their day job is to run the traditional NFTs, right? Copyrights and all this stuff. So NFT is basically an extension of what we have traditionally and put into digital space. So instead of a lawyer doing the middleman or a sort of a organizations overseeing it in the traditional way, you actually let the blockchain be the arbitrator of the truth, right? It's a pretty cool concept. You see some crazy stories of NFT artworks being sold for crazy amount of millions. That's definitely a big sort of kick up the whole NFT craze into the mainstream media, even fueling that kind of everyone just talking about it. BBC is writing things about it, and ABC News. Pretty much everyone is getting into it. I think it's a great sort of it's just one of the things in crypto that are really interesting that might sort of grab certain people from the traditional space getting them interested, because not everyone is interested in everything, right? So if you just tell them that crypto is only good for this, and they might go like, I don't need this in my life, right? What's cool about that? I have no issues using whatever traditional, but the more of this innovations come into space, the more options you actually see and get people interested. It's just another way of getting more retail, traditional crowds to actually participate in crypto. Then they can decide, what this technology is, what they actually want to do in the space. Do they want to be a developer? Do they want to be an investor? Do they want to sort of start their own cryptocurrency? It's really up to them. The more play, the better in this space, because we all sound like it's a huge space with billions running around. But if you look at the traditional small, like crypto is so small, right? The number of users compared to the number of users of traditional system is it's uncomparable at the moment. So I think with all this innovation, it's just a way to bridge that gap.
Yeah, I think kind of every cycle that we go through, we see a new emergence of some kind of cool tech or some development that really blows up. And from past experience, it's cool to see this stuff, and people are definitely making a lot of money at it. But at the end of the day, it's an emerging technology, and the number one thing you can do is your own research and be very careful. But it's definitely, it's interesting to watch. I'll say that.
I love it. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the NFT phase that's going on. BTC Maxims will probably cringe at those three letters. I've really enjoyed it. Jose and I dabbled in it. I've made one. I was a bit upset with the gas fees, so hopefully we can get them cheaper. But no, I think it's really good for the community for adoption. I think anything that we can do to please different areas of the just general community is good for Bitcoin, good for crypto, and good for its sectors. Yeah.
I think one positive thing that I would say for NFTs is just rewarding the artists, right? Giving the small artists, not the big ones or the names that have that background ready. It's just giving like one example would be people who does like an everyday art that he posts in the net or his Instagram account, and then people started recognizing the artwork that he's doing and then the background, and I think that's what NFTs is starting to emerge and give it some traction, is because of those everyday people, everyday artists. Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's one of the positive things that I would say NFT is doing, as well as sports. I think it's starting to emerge in different industries, right? So giving the people that are in the sports industry, similar to when we were starting off when we were kids collecting baseball cards, Pokemon, yeah. And then now it's moving into the digital world. So I think that's where it all lies to, and it's an exciting space, I guess.
We're going to open for questions after this. Do you want to wait? Yeah, cool. Thanks. Maybe on the topic of community and adoption, do you guys want to talk about what we're going to do in 2021 maybe?
Big things. I think it goes back to the point of like user education. Maybe look into the more sort of ways that we can protect consumers in various different forms. Because ultimately in this space, it's a new technology. A lot of people coming into this space are very new to investing, new to a lot of crypto is like a Disneyland of things. There's so many cool stuff happening all the time. So it's very easy to get lost in those details. Education is one part, and so the consumer protection is something that I personally feel really for, because what's worse to see someone do something wrong, whether it's by give you a very simple example is that you guys remember the days where paper wallets exist, right? So paper wallets means that like instead of buying Bitcoin and storing into a hardware wallet or storing to an exchange of yours, the seller gives you a wallet that has a private key that is like folded out and is like sealed, and a public key that you can sort of send money into. So in sort of how UTXO-based cryptocurrency works, including Bitcoin, is that when you send something, it's like you pay someone money, and you have to have change sometimes because you might not be sending full amount. So once you get those money out from a paper wallet, people might just go like, hey, I have like, one Bitcoin I bought like years ago, and I'm going to send it all out to my Binance account, right? And then they decided, hold on, I'm just going to keep 50% of it in a paper wallet. So I decided to send 50% of it out, 0.5 Bitcoin. But they don't realize how Bitcoin transactions works is that the change address, right, might not belong to you. It might belong to the original seller. So if you send out 1 Bitcoin, 50 or 0.5 will goes to Binance, 0.5 will get returned to a change address that doesn't belong to the user. So it's actually something that we help as much as we can for people to sort it out. But these are not the users' fault entirely. I would say that as industry leaders, as handholders of a lot of newbies into the space, it is also part of the responsibility to educate a lot of things. Another thing is like scams, right? It's like you keep hearing the news about this Bitcoin scam, this crypto scam. They are not Bitcoin scams, they're not crypto scams, they're just scams, right? Scams exist in different shape or form. If you look at all this double Bitcoin, send me ETH and send me 2 times back. If you actually look at it in a traditional way, if someone tells you like, hey, send me $5,000 shilling and I give you $10,000 back, will you believe that? Probably not. You have skepticism on that. But just because that the unit of account gets switched to cryptocurrency, suddenly people might be more gullible that, this thing might be true, and then they get scammed into that. So a lot of these things, scams, sort of usability issues, and all the sports is something that we really help on. And another thing we do is that we really sort of talk to our customers a lot, like face to face. I mean, a lot of you probably here have chatted me on Telegram, on Twitter, some shape or form. And we do actually do a lot of outreach as well to some of you just to get feedback. And one of the things that happens as we go, there's two things that can't escape, taxes and debt. So, inheritance sort of planning and stuff. I think most of us here wouldn't have really thought that far into how you deal with your crypto when it comes unavailable. So we do actually also help out some of the customers deal with, or some of our customers estate deal with some of these issues that comes about. And I think more needs to be done in this space, and that's kind of where my focus would be, to help sort of make sure that, if we go from 20% adoption rate in Australia to 80%, right, that's going to be millions and millions of new users coming to the space. There will be stumbling on the space a little bit like how we once were when we first started. So just, back then there was no emails and all the stuff that's so active telling people the stuff, and there's no articles, no guides. And today I think that's more, which is good to see. And I'd like to sort of help out and see how we can sort of bring that to the next level.
Big things.
Huge. Okay, I think we'll open the floor to questions. If you have a question, raise your hand and I'll bring the mic to you. Did you have a question, sir? Yeah.
Hey guys, Flare Networks is coming out going live in Q2 currently. I just want to know, in the DeFi space, is Binance doing something with that in the DeFi space?
Slow battery, but here we go.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, Binance Australia and Binance Global, I want to sort of make sure everyone gets that, is that they're sort of separate entities. So, sort of DeFi and all this stuff, they're all provided by Binance Global. So, and all these new updates will, we can't provide any insights. We're not privy into any of these developments and what will come next. The only way to get sort of exposed to those information is to be just like everyone else, to keep up with the announcements, keep up to Twitter, and really hear what is next to come. But one thing you can guarantee is that Binance move really quickly in this kind of spaces. So if there's something that the users really want and it's what really is good for the space, there's definitely sort of level of participation that they will get involved with.
Just to add on to that, we're a really open and progressive team, and any sort of idea is never pushed back on or shut on by Jeff or by anyone in the team. We encourage an open floor, and the team is very passionate about growing the crypto space. So things like DeFi, NFTs, and everything like that, we're crypto lovers. So it's something that's always on the table and something we're always talking about. However, that's something I'll flip by global.
Any more questions?
Hi guys, just a question. I'm planning to be compliant with Australian ATO for super funds.
The question about, are we fully compliant for super funds?
Yeah, like to do trading and Binance and for like super funds can use you or not?
You mean like a self-managed super fund or like an actual super fund?
Self-managed super fund.
I mean, we already have heaps of SMSF users. So we are a registered provider. We are registered with Australia. There's no reason why your accountant wouldn't be able to recommend us as a provider. We have an article that we written out for this specifically to go down all these questions and stuff, because when it comes to like an international brand and exchange, but we're all based here, we're all regulated here, there tends to be a lot of confusion of like whether you can or cannot do certain things. But the answer is yes. We do have a lot of SMSF customers, and that's one of the fastest growing user sector that we've seen lately as well.
buys up a particular currency and the pair goes up.
So in SMSFs,
Yeah.
my sort of like, I'm not a registered tax advisor, but my understanding of SMSF is that you hold the responsibility of your funds, right? You have to explain to the auditor every year what happened to your money that the ATO have agreed to put out for your adventures. Yeah, I mean you can withdraw it to another platform, you can trade it, but you have to do it within a level of compliance that your accountant is okay with, because ultimately SMSF needs to be audited once a year. You have to have all this necessary stuff put into in place to make sure that that audit goes through smoothly.
Just on alternate coins on Binance Australia, what determines when they're going to come online? Like, for instance, fintechs and other, how do we know when they will come along?
That's a good question. So similar to the question that a gentleman had earlier. So every sort of announcement like this would only go through official channels. So keep it fair to everyone. So you would if you're tuned into the announcement, you have to subscribe to our emails. You're looking after our social media. You would get sort of the announcement out. And usually when a coin gets listed, it will not be like, oh, listed like just like that. It's usually a time frame of like it's going to be listed in 2 days time at this specific time, so that you can ensure the number of people have that heads up. Reasonable time, obviously, you will drag on to like a full week. If you're not, yeah. Oh, you're talking about listing a coin on Binance. So coin listing is a process that taken after by Global. So if you want to learn about listing tips, there is a LinkedIn article that CZ wrote a while ago. It's still kind of hold through today. Just search CZ's listing tips on Google and you'll find an article. It goes through a few things, it's just too long for me to sort of read through it here. But it has to all go through the due process. I mean, we get requests left and right on certain sort of questions like that. But my answer is always the same. To be fair to everyone has to go through the same due process.
Any more questions?
There's a
Okay. Give me 1 second.
So you already sort of mentioned it, but obviously one of the big barriers, and I don't know for me it was a barrier, is how these assets are dealt with in terms of tax. And particularly once you start digging down the rabbit hole and you go from the major exchanges to your own wallet so that you can stake, and then you get staking rewards, which are pseudo dividends, or you get airdrops and then your own MetaMask and whatever. What is, at the moment, I guess, two things. One is what is Binance doing? So you mentioned trying to assist in terms of how that tax works. I know most exchanges printed out like the usual one, but I also know that because of the volatility of the space, more people end up trading far more frequently. It's not like an index where you could put a small amount and passively invest. A lot of Bitcoin will end up being you passively invest and then you take it out, you put it back in. It just becomes very complicated. Is there any movement from Binance, and it probably will be a global thing, to facilitate the ease on the app, because I think that would draw in far more users. And two, what is your advice, generally speaking, outside of Binance for actually doing crypto tax? I know there's a couple of different organizations that claim to be able to do it for you. I haven't yet done my own research into whether or not I trust them enough to give suddenly all of your wallet addresses to it, but yeah.
That's a good question. And I think a lot of people will be interested to hear what we have to say about that. So, I mean, like, we have a tax reporting tool that's coming going out live in a few, I mean, it will be for the year FY, definitely. So, but that's always a guide. All the issues that brings out the CBT sort of statements for you, it's only purely for guides. If you look at that, it actually says that because they use a different model that you might not agree on, or your tax accountant might have a more tax efficient way for you perform the calculation. So it's always a guide. Best person to talk about this is your tax accountant. They will have the most accurate answers. So in about 2 weeks' time, is it? About 2 weeks' time. When is the exact date?
The 8th of April.
The 8th of April. So we'll be having cover tax. So there are a tax accountant here based in Brazil. So we'll be having them to do a masterclass to go through a lot of these questions and queries. You know, I think they'll be covering a few topics, including ways that you can make sure that you don't overpay your CGT. And things like that. So the second part is advice, right? What would I advise on? So read up some good articles. We did write an article about crypto tax. So you search crypto tax Binance Australia 2021 on Google, you will find an article that we produced. It's a fairly long article, it's about thousands of words long, and it actually covers how the ATO classifies different kind of trading, like including airdrops and staking rewards. It might all sound complicated, but they all kind of fall into one of few categories that have. The only thing that aren't too clear from the ATO right now is probably maybe only derivative trading. But you know, derivative trading is something that we don't, as Binance Australia, we don't offer, and also we don't endorse because we don't have the, you know, it's something that global offers and not by us. So last person to sort of talk about how to deal with, you know, stuff that are quite still gray on ATO sort of descriptions is to really talk to his tax accountant, and then based on your situation, based on your trading habits, trading volume, they will be able to provide you the most best answers. I think if you're, for example, if you're new, you might want to sort of consider some of this stuff before you venture into, you know, all the Panama stuff and everything. If you don't understand it, I think there's a lot of resources out there that can help you out, or just speak to someone professional to get advice on it.
I just want to reiterate that the kind of presentation that we're doing on the 8th, Tax is a cryptocurrency specialist in tax. So if there's anyone you want to ask questions to, or just get any, you know, grey areas covered, these guys will, you know, be able to do that. So tag along for that, and that'll be like a online seminar kind of thing, and we'll do a whole question and answer thing at the end. So anyone who's wanting to know, join that. It'll be good.
So I'm going to flip the script a little bit and try to go away from the data analytics point and smart chain contracts, altcoins, and such, and go towards the main question for the floor. So I'm getting a lot of like friends, family that I've told about cryptocurrency or Bitcoin itself for the past 4 or 5 years, and they're like, oh yeah, sure. And now they're asking me questions. Okay, like I want to learn about it. If someone's coming to you as a no coiner and you want an orange pill, do you have a really good like sandwich, or like read this book, listen to this podcast, watch this like documentary, boom, and then they're like, okay, now I'm interested. Curious.
The Bitcoin Standard by Safety Moss. I'd have to say that book covers everything, and then I would also say his podcast, so Safety Moss. He's got a Bitcoin Standard podcast, and if you honestly, in my opinion, Twitter is the best place to just, you know, you create an account, an anonymous account, and just get amongst it. Not only is it like a huge online party 24/7, but there's just so much concentration of brains and information and people that you can just reach out to and ask for help. I don't know if we've got our Twitters up there. Just come and speak to us afterwards. Honestly, we can give you, I'm sure we've all got different, you know, things we can say. But my dad's actually up there in the crowd. He's read the Bitcoin Standard. What do you reckon? What do you reckon, Dad? Good? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Interesting. Probably only halfway through it, but well, yeah. Well, I don't know. We can give you these links, but yeah, that's my opinion.
I think like other than Twitter, Binance has the Binance Academy, So if you want to learn anything about crypto, from beginner to intermediate to advanced sort of things that goes like pages and pages, you can all do that on Binance Academy. Just Google that, you will find that link out there. And it actually has a way for you to guide you through topic as well, so it won't throw you into the depth of the ocean unless you unless you actually click on it. But it actually prompts you like if this topic is a beginner topic and it takes about like 3 minutes to read, it will actually stay on top, so you actually get the whole overview of things. That's one way. And also, if you're at university, you haven't been to one of Daniel's meetup, definitely check those out. So Daniel is a blockchain educator that works with partners with exchanges like us, with projects like Polkadot to do a lot of local meetups. So you can actually meet people in the space, talk about things and hash out all your ideas and questions and all sorts with the community. Because that's where people will invest. It's actually face-to-face interaction, and then you can make friends along the way as well. And we all, if we weren't for crypto, I don't think any of us here would have met and crossed paths in our lives. So we're grateful for that.
Yeah, I was going to mention the Binance Academy thing. Try and get them to take the bill and then pass them on to the Binance Academy, because it does have that beginner's journey all the way through to expert. It's really difficult for me because I have like a bit of a family that's anti-establishment. I'm not all hippie and stuff, so but just like anti-establishment. I haven't had to try too hard to convince anyone. My grandfather recently he got involved, but it's just been that constant awareness that I'm pushing across to them. Have a look at this, like have a look at Sailor, all of this sort of stuff, to try and get them to come across and join the dark side.
I think for me, Andreas Antonopoulos is one of the OGs in this space when I was starting off 2012, 2013. And then there's also this the little Bitcoin book that I really read. It's very good. 21 Lessons as well by Gigi. Those are several books that I really admire and might be able to give to those newbies in the space. And just like in YouTube, just search a lot of the resources from other Bitcoiners as well that gives you introduction. There's a lot of cryptocurrency YouTubers as well that you have to really understand what they're trying to do, or advertise whatever kind of cryptocurrency that they're trying to promote. But stick with the basics. Get them started off with educating themselves first before trying to invest. And I think that's the best advice.
Just show them what a 1% allocation of their investment can do against the 99. That was they'll wake them up pretty quickly when you show them the data of past history, I think.
Yeah, ultimately it's the education, like Jose said, right? You have to invest in your own education. Not trying to sort of scare you guys, but I come to the space pretty early. There weren't any of this kind of stuff. Like we stumbled really hard, right? We went through a lot of different ways to learn about this stuff. Really go out of the way. You guys have it easy these days with all this podcast and stuff happening, and especially with me actually saying good things about Bitcoin versus like back in the days. So and all those things actually accumulates, right? In our minds, probably me and Grayson and Jose and James, well, we have like thousands of hours of materials that we have gone through in our heads. So it's definitely not an exaggeration, but there's just so many new things to actually pick up to really understand the space. Like if you don't put in effort to actually educate yourself into what this beast actually is, you will have a hard time when things doesn't go your way. Like if market's going up, everyone feels like a trading genius. That's fine. But and then what next, right? Like, do you actually know about what you're doing? Do you actually know the impact of cryptocurrencies, how it works, and all these things, and why it matters? I think like coming to, there's a saying that you come for the money and you stay for the money. Right? You come for the money means like everyone around you is getting rich with this crypto thing, and you get into it. But you actually, once you understand what crypto actually brings to the world, what it actually can do, and basically reshape money and stuff, then you actually stay because they are putting yourself hard behind this new revolution of making money better. So you come for the money, stay for the money.
I would also add on to that. You mentioned, do your research. It's also about time in the market versus trying to time the market, right? So, anyone can try and be a trader and got all these charts everywhere and it's all sexy, right? Doing all this cool stuff. But nothing beats just hunkering down, learning what it's all about, and building that experience and building that brain portfolio rather than, go your MACDs and your fib retracement, all that shit. Like, that's time in the market versus timing the market. That's what I'd add on to that.
We have one last question.
Hey guys, I guess I've got a two-part question. Firstly, I want to understand more about your relationship with Binance Australia versus Binance Global. How does that work? What do you guys work on that's different to them? What flows down from them? The second part, you talked a bit about education. I just want to know a bit about the Binance Australia plan to get more mass adoption or to educate more people to get involved in crypto and in the space.
Yeah, I touched a little bit on the relationship between Binance Global and Binance Australia. So Binance Australia originated from a OTC desk that we were running back in 2017. Binance came as an investor, and then we started off working through the regulation, the compliance stuff, and it took us years to actually build out all this knowledge and setting the things right once you full exchange. So I would say that the relationship is like it's not really accurate to actually say that it's that, but pretty much like a franchise and franchisee kind of relationship where it's not really, we have our own autonomy, like we don't need to ask permission from Global to run any of this stuff, and obviously we have our own sort of rules and compliance and our values that we adhere to, and that's kind of how we run the show, and that's how it's actually good because we have all the privy on how we decide to run regulation, compliance, and those are really important stuff moving forward in 2021, especially when institutions are coming in. We actually spend a lot of time with regulators offline as well. So we know that this coming few years will be heavily with institutions coming on board, and that's going to make sure regulators are going to be more prudent, they're going to be more active, and regulators in Australia actually understands more than what people might think. So that's why my sort of other role in Binance Australia is also looking after the overall compliance, the sort of the KYC, AML. We have a strong compliance program that has been audited multiple times by Australia to make sure it's all good and proper. Especially with James here as well, he takes care of day-to-day compliance. We do a lot of things behind the scenes to make sure that we remain the most compliant exchange in Australia. Like Grayson as well, he does financial sort of operations. So we don't know how well other exchanges does it, but for us, we actually are quite proud of how we handle transactions and stuff because processing so much money and so much high frequency and being one of the largest exchanges in Australia, we actually are well below the industry sort of tolerance for certain kinds of behaviors that are really unwanted. So we keep it really, really tight with compliance, and that's how we sort of able to become the #1 exchange and going after SMSFs, institutions. We recently had a few public listed companies that are coming on board. I can't say too much on that. So that comes one part of the question. The other part of the question is what we're doing to sort of help and educate, right? So yeah, meetups like this is something that I think we do a lot. I don't actually think that other exchanges does this much meetups, online, offline meetups, all as well. We have right now about 2 meetups a month. We have regular sort of, once we did a 4-hour clubhouse session up to like 2 a.m. or something. Yeah. And we do a lot of online meetups as well. We have, Christmas, we did a team stream. We did, recently we did podcasts as well. So when I was in Sydney a couple of weeks ago, we went to have, recorded a few podcasts with Finder, with these guys at one guy called Sam Square Podcast. They're awesome guys, so check them out. And also with, some sort of the big podcasts in Australia, like Stefan Rivera and people like that. So all we want to do is make sure that like all the knowledge and all the mistakes and all the learnings that we have in our heads, be it as a trader, be it as a crypto enthusiast, being as a exchange CEO, we want to sort of make sure that everyone actually knows about it. Like, you can really tell like, I'm a very free speaker. My team can actually probably can attest to that. I'm actually the mindset that I want actually people to know more things than actually the hide things, because I think that crypto is all about inclusion of information. Everyone has understands how technology works. It's not like the banks where 99% of people have no clue how it works. No preview of how it's being issued, how it's being circulated, when is it, and all this kind of stuff. Maybe they throw a few figures every quarter for you to sort of scramble and piece of information. But crypto is so much bigger, right? It's about everyone having that information, inclusion, and then people can make decisions and choices based on that. I think it will be a game changer for a lot of things, not just in money, not just in finance, but also in other stuff, other projects that we have seen coming through from time to time.
Yeah, that's like the whole package. On a day-to-day sort of operations level and support level, we're all in the Telegram, in the Twitter DMs, in the Instagram, and every message or every conversation with a customer is sort of an educational thing that we're doing with them. So daily we are on top of that. Not only are we doing the monthly sort of these sort of things and everything like that. So we're all very passionate about that education, and I think that's something that really keeps us waking up and pushing throughout the day. Some solid hours, just those helping people out, to make sure that any user's not getting scammed and they're totally aware of what we offer and crypto in general.
Thank you for that. Do you guys have any closing remarks before we end the panel?
Yeah, we'd like just to thank you all for coming down here. Thank you all for your support for Binance Australia and also the global Binance as well. I think on behalf of everyone on the team, thank you all for supporting, all your support. Without you guys, we wouldn't have become the largest exchange in Australia in such a short amount of time. And we'll continue to make sure that we provide the services, the best services, the sort of best support, the best sort of education, interaction, whatever, right? And we're always here to hear your suggestions, feedback. You can drop us a message on Telegram, you can drop us a message on Twitter, tell us what you want, tell us what you have any issues with. We're always here to listen. If you have a particular issue that you aren't too sure whether you want to ask it or it's appropriate to ask it, just private message me on Telegram, and I'll help. More happy to help you out. I think a lot of people actually built that relationship with me personally on Telegram. I do my best to sort of talk to everyone on a daily basis. I sometimes would actually stay up quite late to answer some questions, but obviously if you don't hear back from me over a DM, just send me another one. So sometimes messages get buried like 100-page or something. It goes unnoticed for like half a day. Yeah, I mean, we're committed to the market. We've been here for a long time. Even though we only Binance Australia, the full exchange is only like 8 months old, and we're number one, which is good. But we are deep rooted here, right? We actually started off our OTC desk in one of the small desk offices here, right? And we move on to be a brokerage in a middle room office there, and then we're moving to larger and larger offices by the day. So we'll never forget the humble beginnings of us starting a few guys here, trading crypto with a few few small clients in 2017. And look, that shows commitment and passion of the people running behind. I hope that with today, you finally can put faces on this big yellow and black logo that looks quite nice and stuff. But it's good to always put faces behind the platform that you trust and use day in, day out. So really, thank you all for that.
Very well said, Jeff. I just want to add on that. Anyone who asks a question, come down. We've got some bags for you with a bunch of merch just for participating. So come give us a chat. But once again, thanks all for coming. And we'll just have a chill session now and get to know each other. But cheers.